we bought Benromach Distillery in 1993, and in 1998 we started production. The idea behind Benromach is we want to make a traditional Speyside whisky, the way it would have tasted back in the 1950s. Yeah. So what you find from our Benromach will be ever so slightly peated whisky, yeah, about a 10 to 12 ppm on average. Yeah. And then we also do higher ppm. We do our peat smoke, we do our peat smoke sherry, and then we've got some new ranges like the cask strength, which we will see as we go around. Whisky, we know, begins with 3 ingredients: malted barley, yeast, and water. The water that we use here at Benromach comes from the Chapelton Spring, which is just behind us, comes down the hill, a very pure, very natural water source. Yep. So we begin with our barley, and then we move on to our malted barley. So if we smell it, there's a very slight smokiness on the barley. You can pass it around. And as we said, at Benromach, we make a traditional Speyside whisky. So we use peat to dry and to malt the barley. The peat that we use here at Benromach comes from close to Aberdeen. So it's Gary, you've been in Islay recently? Yeah. So the peat in Scotland is a little bit different. The peat in Islay, because it's close to the sea, we'll get some seaweed and things like that in it. The one that we use here at Benromach comes from the Highlands, so we're a nice floral peat. Yeah. Which gives us a nice, gentle smokiness to our whisky. We get 30 tons of malted barley every 9 days. The malted barley comes in and goes into this tank where we store it. And then when we want to run production, it comes from the top, it goes to a shaker box to remove any small stones, comes down and then into our mill. Yeah. This mill we've got here is over 100 years old. So it came from an old brewery, a beer brewery. This company is no longer in business. The mills they made were so good they never needed repaired. So unfortunately this company has no longer made any money, but this one here is over 100 years old. The reason we like it, it never breaks down, it's very standard and always gives us a consistent product. Yep. So we take our malted barley and then we want to grind it into our grist. Yeah? Grist is a combination of husk, of the grits, and then of the flour as well. Yeah? So you can see we've got our magic ratio in here. Yeah? So about 70 to 75% of our grits, 20% or 25% of our husk, and then 5 to 10% of our flour as well. Yeah? Traditionally, they would have used something called a shaker box. So they can take a sample out, they can put the sample into the top, give it a little shake, and it'll end up separating into our different components. Yeah. So we want the grits, because this is what's going to give us our nice starches, which we're going to convert into sugar, which is going to make our alcohol. We want a little bit of husk, not too much. The husk acts as a filter at the bottom of the mash tun when we're draining out the liquid, and then we want a little bit of flour as well, not too much. One of the nice things about Benromach is when we stand here, we can pretty much see 80% of the process in one room. Yeah? So we've got our mash tun, we've got our washbacks, and then we've got our stills as well. Yeah? So we are running about 14 different mashes per week. Yeah? We run 3 shifts every day for the distillers, and then we're closed on a Saturday and a Sunday. Yeah? One of the things as we walk around Benromach, which is quite important, Benromach is a traditional handcrafted whisky. Yeah? You will see no computers here in Benromach. Yeah? So all the whisky is made using the distiller's skill, which would be their smell, their taste, their sight, and their touch. Yeah? So handcrafted traditional whisky, like what would have been made in the 50s and 60s. Yeah? There's only one box in the corner, and that box is only a pump to switch on the water. Yeah? Everything else is done by hand. The valves are turned by hand. Everything is checked from temperatures to quality of the liquid as well. Yeah? So when we go in, we use 3 different washes. The first one at 63. and then 63, 75, and then 90 degrees. Our first wash and our second wash will go forward to our wash back for fermentation. The third wash is recycled and comes in with the first water of the next batch. Yeah? So we try and reuse as much of the ingredients as possible and try and waste as little. Yeah? It's a very efficient process. For fermentation, we've taken our nice sugary liquid that we've made in the first stage, and now we want to ferment that. Yeah? At Benromach, it's all about adding flavour to all the way through the process. So at Benromach, we use two different types of yeast. We use a distiller's yeast, which is traditional, and then we also use a brewer's yeast as well. Yeah? The brewer's yeast is to give us our nice fruity flavours. Yeah? On average, we ferment at Benromach for 3 to 5 days, so it's a longer fermentation than what we would normally get. Most alcohol is made in the first 48 hours. If you were to take a little drink of this now, it would taste a little bit like a pale ale, like an IPA. Yeah? So we'll get some nice fruity, some pear, some apple flavours. Gordon MacPhail bought Benromach in 1993. When they got the distillery, it was an empty shell. Yeah, there was not very much left. So when they were looking at the distillery and when they were deciding what distillery character they wanted to make, because of the history of Gordon MacPhail, being in business since 1895, they went back through the archive of the whiskey that we bottle and that we've collected, and they found out that in the 1950s, Speyside whiskey was traditionally very slightly peated. Yeah? Many distilleries in Speyside nowadays don't put peat in their whiskey, but traditionally that was what would have happened. So when we reopened Benromach, the idea was to make a very slightly peated, a little bit smoky. Yeah? So on average 10 to 12 ppm. Yeah? The only whiskey that doesn't have peat at Benromach is the organic. Yeah? For some reason, we could not get the peat certified as organic. So the rules in Scotland are quite difficult. Although peat is an organic substance, we couldn't get it certified by the Soil Association as organic. So that's the only one that's not peated. Everything else is slightly peated. So after our 3 to 5 days, we have fermented. We're now going to be round about 8% alcohol. Yeah. And now we're going to go into our wash still. So our wash still holds 7,500 litres. And now we're going to do our first stage of our distillation. At the end of this process, we're going to end up with something that's 22 to 24% alcohol. Yeah. If you look out the window, you can see that at Benromach, we use shell and tube condensers. Some distilleries use a worm tub. Here at Benromach, we like the shell and tube condenser because it gets lots of contact with liquid and copper, yeah, which is very important in the process for removing any impurities or things like that in the new mixed spirit. The easy way to see which one is the wash still and which one is the spirit still, the wash still has always got a small window in there. So a small window that we can see where the liquid is bubbling up. And we don't want the liquid to go over the top because it's going to make a big problem and lots of cleaning. So we can see from there what level the liquid is inside. As Benromach is all done by hand, the distiller can know when to add the heat or when to remove the heat. And it's all done by sensing it, by what he can see and by what he can touch as well. Yeah. Many times you will see them and they will tap and they can see where the liquid is inside the still. Yeah, we have no computers to tell them, so they can tap and they can sense where the liquid is. Yeah. So from here we're at 22 to 24% alcohol. And then we're going to go into our spirit still, which takes 4,500 litres. Into our spirit still for the final stage of our distillation process. You can see from our spirit still, we've got our reflux bulb in the middle. Yeah. When you go to different distilleries, you can see from the line arm at the top, the line arm will quite often give us some information about the distillery character. Yeah. If the line arm goes up the way, we're going to get a very light spirit, because a spirit needs to work hard to get over the top. Yeah? If we're going down the way, we're going to get quite an oily spirit, because it's very easy for the vapor to go over the top. At Benromach, we've got a medium line arm, so we're looking for a medium bodied new make spirit, which is perfect for maturation. Here we have our spirit safe. The wash still would run on this side, and then our spirit still will run on this side as well. Yeah. Nothing's actually being distilled today. They're shut down because Saturday and Sunday is a holiday. If we were here, we could see the liquid coming through, and then they can decide when they want. So we've got our wash still happening in here, spirit still happening in here, and then when he decides he wants to take the cut of the whiskey, we can take the cut. Yeah. As we mentioned, there are no computers here at Benromach, so you can see we've got our conversion charts, which tell us about temperature and alcohol percentage. They'll add a little bit of water. They can use the hydrometer to tell the alcohol level, and also we're using it temperatures, and everything is done by what the distiller can see. Yeah. If it's cloudy, we want it to be nice and clear, and then we know when to start to take our cut. Yeah. When we're cutting the whiskey, there's 3 different parts of our whiskey. We've got our head, our heart, and our tails. Yeah. Sometimes the head would be the foreshots, sometimes tail would be the feints. We only want to collect the heart of the whiskey. Yeah. And that's what we want to move forward to our maturation. Yeah. The head and the tails will go back into our wash still, or go back in our spirit still at the next batch, and then they will be distilled again. Yeah. Nothing, no computers again. So if we want to check how much how much heart has been collected, they can take the dipstick, they can go down. I think today it will be empty. So on average, from one distillation, we're going to collect about 1,000 litres of new make spirit. And then we collect that 1,000 litres, and then as Georgia said, we fill on a Wednesday and we fill on a Friday as well. So we fill cask twice a week. Yeah. So 14 distillations per week. On average per year is going to get us around 400,000 litres of new make spirit to move forward to maturation. They can see how much spirit they have collected. This is the computer system that we use at Benromach. Yeah. So very traditional, very handcrafted. Or our heads. Yeah. So this is the first part that comes out. You can see that kind of the greeny blue copper color. Yeah. So we don't want to drink this. Yeah, it doesn't smell very nice. Yeah. So that bit goes back in and it's recycled. We also have our feints, which is our tails. We don't really want to drink that either. Yeah. So what we want to collect is we want to collect the heart. So this is our heart of our distillation, about 1,000 litres per ton, per run. If you take it, put it on your hand, and if you give your hand a little rub, you'll start to get the flavours of that new make spirit. Yeah. If you want to pass it around. And from that, we should be able to smell that very slightly peated, and we should get a nice fruity aroma in there as well. Yeah. If we wanted to drink it, we could drink it now. Yeah, it's very, very delicious. You know, as we said, the whole part of the process is to try and include as much flavour as possible. Yeah. So we've used 2 different types of yeast. We've used a longer fermentation. So all the way through this process is about adding flavour. When we take our new make spirits, that comes down and it goes into our spirits receiver. All the way through the process, we've got contact of spirit and wood. Yeah? So this one's actually made of oak. So we collect it in here, and then we move through to the filling station where we're going to start to fill our casks. all the way through the first stage of our process, we've tried to add as much flavor to our new make spirit as possible. Yeah? And when we get to this stage, we're going to fill into our casks. Yeah? At Benromach, we have a first fill policy. So we only fill into first fill bourbon or first fill sherry casks. Yeah? The reason for this is we want to get as much flavor from that cask as possible. Yeah? The only one which doesn't do this is our organic. Again, because of the rules of organic regulation, we fill into virgin oak. Yeah? So with the organic, you'll see that organic is traditionally a very young whiskey, maybe 7 or 8 years old. If we left it in the wood for too long, it would start to taste too much like wood. Yeah? So the organic's very young, but because we've made a medium body spirit, perfect for maturation, when we're going into our first fill bourbon and first fill sherry, it means we can mature them for a long time to get to a nice, delicious whiskey. Yeah. So in the first stage of our process, we've made about 1/3 of the flavor of the whiskey. Our maturation is going to give us the other 2/3 of our flavor. Yeah. So if there's anything you're going to remember about Benromach, traditional whiskey, handcrafted, made the traditional way, slightly peated, and using first fill casks only. Yeah? So we first fill bourbon and we first fill sherry as well. Yeah. The whole thing is we want to make as much flavour in our whiskey. Yeah? And when we get to taste our whiskey later on, I think you'll agree it's a very delicious, easy drinking whiskey. Yeah? If there was one thing we're to look at in this room, which is quite important, if you can see the plaque at the top. Yeah. So we said we have the last filling, which was done in 1983, and then Gordon MacPhail bought the distillery in 1993. Gordon MacPhail refurbished the distillery, and then we opened in 1998. At the bottom on the left-hand side, you'll see an important name at the bottom, Keith Cruikshank, who is the production supervisor. He was here, the first cask that was filled, and then we will meet him later on. Keith is now the distillery manager. Yeah? So Keith has been making whiskey at Benromach as long as we have had Benromach. Cask comes in empty, and they will weigh the cask on here. They will fill the cask, and they will come back again and weigh it when it's full by using the traditional way. And then they convert that to figure out how many litres was in that particular cask. Yeah. So again, everything done by hand. Yeah. I'm sure they would like electronic scales, but Keith likes to keep people busy. Yeah. So everything done by hand. Okay, so welcome and enjoy the smell. If you have a look down on the front row, we've got a cask from every year that we've filled at Benromach. Yeah, so we started in 1998 and we're all the way up. We've got a space here. We're missing one, but our cask from 2019 will sit up here as well. Yeah. At Benromach, we use a traditional dunnage type warehouse. Yeah, so you'll see that the floor is made of dirt. We're onto wooden racking, and traditionally we're going 3 high. The reason we would like to do this is a traditional style, and it gives us a nice constant temperature in here all year round. Yeah? On average, our angel share in Scotland, which is our evaporation from the cask, is about 2 to 3%. At Benromach, we would like our angels to be quite thirsty, so we try and keep the angel share to a minimum. So when we finally come to bottle, we have got as much beautiful whiskey as we can. Right. So at the moment at Benromach, we've got about 18,000 casks, which are maturing here. Yeah. And as we said, we've got a mixture of bourbon and we've got a mixture of sherry as well. Yeah. At the moment, we are filling around about 70% of our fill goes into first fill sherry, and about 30% goes into our bourbon as well. Yeah. So if you look at the casks, you'll kind of see from the cask maybe where we get our, this cask would be from a Jim Beam, yeah? So no, that's going to be in a bourbon cask. In our 10-year-old and in our 15-year-old, we've got a combination of sherry and bourbon, yeah? So it's about 70 to 80% sherry, 20% bourbon in there, yeah.
Querida gente del mundo whisky, nos encontramos con Peat, el manager distiller de Benromach, una empresa con la cual trabajamos y somos importadores y representantes en la República Argentina. Quisiera hacerte unas preguntas sobre la nueva línea que tiene Benromach. El viejo 10 años, que es de costumbre, el 15 años, tenemos el Peat Smoke, la línea Cask Strength y tenemos también el 35 años.
The main whiskies I have is the classic style. We have a 10-year-old, 15, a cask strength 10-year-old as well, and we have all the vintages. We do have a contrast range, which is whiskies of other styles, and an older range which we call the heritage style. So the 10 and the 15 at the moment and the cask strength are our core style, and they really relate to the style we produce here. They're a malty, delicate smokiness coming through, which is that classic style of space that we have here at Benromach, matured in sherry and bourbon as well, so you get a lovely rich and round flavour coming through.
El 10 años y 15 años son algo único, pero este 35 años que estamos tomando, que quedó de la degustación, es una cosa maravillosa.
The 35-year-old Benromach is one of our oldest whiskies that we have at the moment. It's matured in fast and refill sherry casks, and it's quite typical of the style of whisky that was made here at the distillery in the early 1980s. So you get the lovely sort of rich, fruity, mellow flavours coming through. You get apples and pineapple and kiwi fruit. So much complex flavours because of the length of time it's been matured in sherry casks, but a really lovely, mellow style of whisky.
El 10 años para mi gusto es el más equilibrado de todos. El 15 años es de un nivel superlativo y un precio muy accesible para el consumidor.
Yeah, the 10 and the 15 are part of our classic style, the core style range, you know. They are matured in very similar casks. The price range is, you know, retail between 40 and 60 pounds, UK retail price. The quality it's excellent quality. We use the best quality casks. But they're of the classic style, so you get that lovely malty, creamy, fruity notes, a delicate smokiness. The 15-year-old is far more fruity in its character, far more complex, and that's because it's had an extra 5 years maturing in the sherry casks. But they're both of the same family and the same style, the core style of the classic Benromach.
¿Tiene un crecimiento año tras año en cuanto a volumen o es lo que pienso yo que se mantiene más o menos igual?
When we started in 1998, our production was quite modest, about 135,000 litres of alcohol. We kept that production until 2013, and then we realised that our markets were going to need a higher volume of Benromach. So we increased production in 2014, doubling the production again up to about 250,000 litres of alcohol. And then in 2017, we increased again up to just under 400,000 litres of alcohol. The reason for this is because Benromach will be bottled between 10 and 20 years old, so we need to produce the whisky now, so in 10 years time we have the volume of spirit whisky that we can bottle it for our overseas customers.
¿Cuál es tu preferido, Keith?
That's a tricky question. It's like asking me what's my favourite child. Favourite child. It's difficult. Certainly the 10-year-old is a lovely whisky. It's such a rounded whisky, you know. It's full-bodied, it has all the typical characteristics of Benromach, but the 15-year-old is so classic. It's just got so much flavour, and it's got a lovely balance between that and the smokiness. So it's hard to say, but the 10-year-old, yes, but sometimes it's a 15, so yeah.
En cuanto a la empresa Córdoba McPhail, se está expandiendo, armando otra nueva destilería, ¿no?
Yeah, we are currently looking at building a new distillery on Speyside, beside Granton and Spey. So yeah, hopefully we should have that within the next few years. So just watch this space. A very exciting time for the company. We always look at growth for the future generations. So yeah, hopefully 2 or 3 years time we'll have another distillery. Government Fair second.
Te quiero felicitar por esta destilería, que es maravillosa, por la atención que nos brindás año tras año. Tú como Richard, el primo, todos, generalmente se brinda muchísimo por nosotros, por ser representantes de esta marca en la República Argentina. Brindo por ustedes, por la gente de Benromach, por la gente de Gordon McPhail y por ser amigos de la Whisky Malt Argentina.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. Pleasure. Thank you.